are settling as Bunbury behind the ball.
That puts us at 82, 49, and 8 on the season, hitting at a 62.5% clip.
Back-to-back golden boots. That's 3 in a row for me. Free, too, man. Like, not a dime. That's called being for the people.
It's over! The Columbus Crew, 2023 MLS Cup champions!
All right. Welcome in and welcome back, everybody, to Sports Prophet TV. This is the MLS Live Podcast, Special Leagues Cup Edition. I am Cooper, a.k.a. Sports Prophet. With me, as always, is Garrett, my co-host at Jsomefooty. And with us today is a very special guest, Sebastian Salazar from ESPN, ESPN FC, and Football Americas. Welcome in, buddy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Big fan of the show. Glad you guys are doing this type of content. I can't get enough of it. Me and my primo, as we like to throw our shekels on MLS and other stuff. So pumped to be with you guys and pumped to look ahead to Leagues Cup. Should be a very interesting tournament as it kicks off here soon.
Yeah, it was. We talked about it a little bit last show, kind of teased the show. We didn't know what to expect necessarily last season, but it was a big success. It was a lot more fun. I mean, betting MLS is always fun, but it was even more
fun. The right word? Is fun the right word? Cardiac.
Yeah, no kidding. It was fun for us. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, like 250 some odd goals in that tournament. So like we'll take that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, we at ESPN we kind of walk the line between the American press and the Mexican press, and it's always interesting to just catch the vibes off of like what they're saying down there ahead of the tournament. There was a lot of talk last year about how the tournament, loses a little of validity, a little bit of its luster because all the games are played here, especially when Inter Miami won it. The people down there, especially Mexican football right now, needing all the W's it can get and being sensitive to all the L's that it's taking. I think, we're pretty fired up about it. So I think that might manifest itself a little bit in how the Mexican teams approach the tournament this year. Not to say that they didn't take it entirely seriously last year, but between the way the bracket unfolded, which put a lot of the Liga MX teams on one side, and then the fact that like all the games were played here, MLS had an advantage that obviously like when CONCACAF Champions Cup gets played, you see like MLS doesn't really have.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things that Leagues Cup did kind of in response to that was that they're setting up these hub privileges, right? So it only affects the top 4 MX teams, but you got Club America. Their hub privileges are going to be in the state of California, kind of the San Diego area. Monterrey is going to be in the Austin, Houston area. They're going to be starting group play at Q2 Stadium, which is like that's my home club. So I'm actually going to run over there and check out the Monterrey Austin game. And then you got Chivas and Tigres that are going to be also with those hub privileges. So, that's something. I can already I can hear it in Garrett's voice responding, anytime an MX team plays in the United States, it's basically a home game, right?
I mean, it feels like that at times, right? Like I went to Nashville and Club America last year, right? And like that was a Club America home game in the stadium that's right down the street from me. So like it was weird to experience that firsthand. Like I expected it, but it doesn't hit you till you show up and you're just surrounded. You're like, am I at an away game? I mean, what can I say? Liga MX fans, they come out, man. They come out in bunches. But that league also has a ton of more eyeballs than I think most people, especially casual fans, MLS fans, realize just how many people watch Liga MX games.
I think it also depends, too, on which team and where. Like, that's such a lottery when it comes to it. I mean, one of the groups that specifically you mentioned, Austin, I'm thinking Austin, like, Rayados is going to be a home team in that game,
no doubt.
So and there's plenty of other games where you look at that and you say, I mean, the Chivas group. I mean, they're both those games in California. Forget about it; those are 2 home games for Chivas. But not every Mexican team will enjoy that. But it is something that it's a lesson. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. One of our former colleagues actually at ESPN, Tato Noriega, who's now in charge of Rayados. He's like the sporting director down there. He was, as soon as they went out last year, he was in the press complaining about the travel, and he had his little document with his spreadsheet of we traveled more than everybody else and and so it's interesting to see the adjustments that were made. I don't think they're ever going to play games in Mexico because the money's always going to be here, or there's going to be more money here. But they do got to try to find ways to even it out, because I think truthfully, this is a marketing play. and they want those big Mexican teams there at the end. So if you can give them some type of advantage beyond the home game and now maybe a little less travel, I think you're going to set yourself up for like what is the dream of this competition, which is like LAFC against Club America, right? Something like that. In 2022, I think it was the year they didn't do the tournament, or maybe it was 21 after COVID, where they had to kind of showcase games.
Oh yeah.
We still had the rights to it, and we did like in SoFi, we did a LAFC and Club America, then like Chivas Galaxy doubleheader. Yeah. And that environment, that is like the max best case scenario dream for Leagues Cup. And I think last year we didn't really get that enough. And so this year, hopefully, I think for the people in charge of making the money off this thing, they're hoping we get it. And then for us too as fans, you know, that's the point of this. You're dealing with a lot of, I don't know, Colorado against Leon, for instance, or Minnesota against Necaxa to get to that, you know, those gems at the end.
Right. Yeah. The good news is for us is that, you know, we're junkies. So like we love every little matchup, you know, and I heard you bring up, obviously, Chivas is going to have some home games. We're going to obviously get to it later in the show because we actually have some action on some of those games. Sometimes I feel like odds makers just kind of it blows me away sometimes. They don't necessarily do their homework where they should in every aspect in every game. And they just kind of hang cookie cutter lines. And some of those, you know, the Chivas games, the games involving Monterrey and even Pumas. And there's some more examples too, but it's just like, man, do you realize this is going to be a home game for the Yemeki side? So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be part of our breakdown and analysis as we get to it. But with that being said, let's just kind of jump into it. All righty, so there it is, Leagues Cup 2024, 47 clubs. That's beautiful. I love the graphic. I love looking at it. This is the only tournament, the only time we get a chance to have all of them together. So it's good stuff. But
how did they not get St. Louis and San Luis in the same group? What are we doing here, guys? Come on.
That would have been, I don't know if I could have handled all that. So, but
that feels like an MLS manufactured rivalry if there ever was one, right?
Right. Yeah. All right, so jumping into it, first game on the docket, we got Atlanta United. They're going to be at the Benz hosting DC United. And Garrett, I think you're kicking us off here, buddy.
Yep. So Atlanta United hosting DC United at the Benz, like you said. I'm going to take the over 3 here to get it kicked off. This is the Friday game. We've got games for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so a full weekend slate for you. Listen, Atlanta United have had games that have gone 3 or more goals in 85% of their home games this season. That's including the last 6. So even remove Gigi, remove Almada, like they're still getting to those totals. Thanks to both their attack where they've got special players, man. When you look at Silva and Saba and what they're doing on the wings, they make it work. Somehow Daniel Rios is resurrected and is actually contributing as well. They're at the 9 until they bring in a 9. And I've talked about DC United on the show before. They're sitting on 2 clean sheets all season.
Right.
So like that defense is just an issue. It's been an issue all season. They already have tried to address it in the transfer window. By bringing in Boris from Maccabi out in Israel. I don't know when we'll see him. I don't expect to see him here. And I don't know what kind of impact he's going to have. I've talked about players coming over from the Israeli league before, and that's just more of a wait and see. They got a new left back coming in David Schnig. I do expect him to debut in this cup. I don't know if it'll be this first game here, but that transfer was done earlier in July. So there is a chance that we could see him in this one. We'll just have to wait and see. And it was nice to know that to see that the Miranchuk deal for Atlanta is going to get across the line. He's going to be their new 10. Again, it's hard to say when he debuts in this tournament, though. We've seen guys come in right away, and we've seen other guys take their time, especially if they just wrapped up a season in Europe, especially one that at Atlanta had where they went all the way to the EuroLeague final. So lots of games played there. They might give him a little bit more of a longer offseason before thrusting him in. But yeah, with these numbers, with the way Atlanta is still able to get it done, and not get it done both in attack and on defense. Benteke's Benteke, right? Like you have to enjoy that DC attack, and that defense is something I want to attack. So sitting here, I'm just going to go probably more conservative with the over 3 instead of trying to get cute with the both teams to score over 2.5 or anything like that. I am curious if Benteke starts with the All-Star game tonight and those festivities. Minnesota's already said that Laud will not start. I don't even know if he's going to play because I think they have a Friday game as well, and he participated in the All-Star. So we'll have to see. I mean, Benteke's been a machine since he's come to MLS, though. Like he just plays. Even at his age, he's been starting just about every game. And like he is DC's like target and attack solely. Like everything plays through him. So I do expect to see him in this game, even if he doesn't start. But for that, we're going with just the over 3, as I think there's goals to be had in this one.
Yeah. And Teke didn't start in the All-Star game, right, too? So maybe that's something that you say he might get a run out. Man, as a DC United fan, I kind of hate what you're saying. I'm here in the nation's capital, but it's so true. I mean, they've been shipping goals all year, but really shipping goals late. I think they played – didn't they have a 3-2 or a 4-3 between these two earlier in the year? I don't know. Yes. I don't always lean on that, but there's always kind of craziness between these two generally. Even when DC United's way off the pace, they usually give Atlanta a good game. So, yeah, man, it's a good shout here. I like the over there.
Well, the only thing I will say in response to that, as far as we're not big on head-to-head either, but when you look at specific matchups, Atlanta hasn't done anything in that back line except lose Caleb Wiley. And now you got the same Benteke rolling into town in the same exact place. I don't know if there's a whole lot they can change, on a whim and stop what they did. Benteke made it look like he was, in the layup line in pregame warmups against Atlanta United last time these two met. It was too easy for him. So yeah, I think this feels like 2-1 worst case scenario either way. And I think we definitely get a winner here.
And I love the price at -110. Y'all know I don't like to eat a lot of juice when I don't have to. And so, at -110, this feels like a really good lay.
Right on. All righty. On to the next one we go. All right. Our first matchup here of an MLS and MX side. You got LAFC at home. Beautiful picture of the LA skyline there, hosting Club Tijuana. So this is going to be my first play of the show. And I'm going with both teams to score here. The under has actually taken a little bit of money, or it might just be LAFC money. I'm not sure. This price has come down just a smidge from where I originally got it at. When the line's posted, I got this at like -140. So there has been some money going against me, which I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me, to be honest with you. But I think both teams find the net here. LAFC, obviously less analysis required for them scoring a goal at home against this Tijuana side. Tijuana, the MX season is young, but I have been very impressed with their attack so far. They went and got Reynoso. After that, whatever you want to call it, whatever happened in Minnesota, he's now with Tijuana. He's clearly their best player. And he is a piece that they have desperately been needing over the last couple of years. The attack looks good. I think this is a Zolo side that is going to continue to score goals this season. As far as defensively, I think that's a whole nother discussion. They have some issues on the back line there, but I think that they can find a way to find the back of the net, even on the road here. I think both teams' score comes home.
I'm super intrigued by Xolos. Huh? They're an interesting team for me because they got Juan Carlos Osorio now back in charge, the former Mexican national team manager, and he'd been kind of drifting in the wilderness, and he'd been all over the world. I think he was in Egypt his last job. Before this, we worked with him at the last World Cup at ESPN. He's like a mad scientist if there ever was one, and Xolos is the club where mad scientists do well. They don't do well for long. But like I could very much see him coming in there and with some of the pieces you talked about, making them interesting, not just in this competition, but in Liga MX as well. They've really, for the last 4 or 5 years, almost disappeared from relevance after kind of coming out of nothing in the 2010, 2011, 12. They became a pretty regular contributor to like semifinals, finals in Liga MX, and they've just fallen off totally. So it's a club with a pretty high ceiling if they can get things going.
What do you think about this one, Garrett?
So you know me, my Liga MX knowledge is not nearly as deep as yours, and definitely not as deep as Sebastian's. But I look at some of those results, especially against I guess I would say some of the better, deeper clubs in Liga MX, and I just wonder how Tijuana's back line is going to hold up to that attack. I mean, like everything LAFC is doing right now is clicking offensively. They're at like 2.5 goals a game at home, like that they're scoring. And so if you like both teams to score, then I think you got to take a stab at LAFC and to win, plus both teams to score at like plus 220, plus 230, somewhere around there.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know, man. I just saw a report today where like LAFC is one of the teams in the running for Lewis O'Brien out of Nottingham, like to bring him back to MLS on loan, where he excelled at DC United, like was clearing away one of their best players. And I would love to have O'Brien back in the league. And now I'm just wondering where LAFC is going to put all these guys, right? Like Bogusz is having, I guess you could argue, an MVP style season right now. And like, I don't know. It's this team is just loaded. Giroud's going to debut at some point in this tournament, I feel.
Yeah.
It's I don't know how, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how LFC don't run away with this one here and like really make a statement early in this tournament. Now, group one, the first game of group play is always like the hardest, right? Like that's the mantra I live by. But this feels like, especially because LAFC, I don't think has fully exercised all those Liga MX demons.
Yeah, I feel that. Garrett, do you remember LAFC versus Juarez last League's Cup?
Yeah, that's when Juarez came on my radar. Like,
yeah. So, Juarez. Look, I think this Tijuana attack is better than the Juarez attack was at that point last season. But this is a similar feel because I think you're gonna get open play here. Tijuana's gonna have 2 or 3 good cracks, on goal, and I think they're gonna knock one in. Now, look, this might be 4-1. There's totally a realm where that happens, and so, I wouldn't blame anybody for just backing the over. I'm have nothing against backing the over here either. Although I think it's like 3.25 at this point. Am I right?
No, it's like 2.75. Like the total's very playable.
I mean, yeah, back the over, back both teams to score. My official play is going to be both teams to score because I am high on the Tijuana attack. But I have no issue with just backing goals here either.
LAFC's also been like vulnerable in big stretches. We were out in LA doing our Copa America coverage for ESPN. We were there the night of the Columbus LAFC game where they shipped 5, at home. And I think I do give Osorio a lot of credit. Again, like if you have a weakness, he's very good at like a game on a day, coming up with a game plan, to exploit that. It's kind of a sidebar here. I've been really high on LAFC futures MLS Cup. I think they're like 8-1 or something like that, because of all the things you're talking about, and I'm sure we'll talk about it for this tournament too. But just in the West, when you start thinking about piecing all those things together and what their best might be like, I just think they're going to end up being a class above anybody else in the conference. And then you're basically getting them at 8-1 if you think that way to be in a final. Right. So yeah, I mean, to me, you think about what they are already and what they could be, and outside of Inter Miami, you're like, and probably Columbus too. You're like, who in this league anyway can hang with these guys?
I will say I do find it interesting. LAFC lead the lead MLS in clean sheets, and I think Hugo Lloris is a statue. Like when I watch him, he is just some of the goals he's let in. I'm like, man, you're just like, nah, I'll get the next one. Like that's what it felt like because he's just a stone. And so, but when you look, it's just surprising that your eyeballs aren't telling you what the stats say here, where LAFC is leading the league in clean sheets, and Hugo Lloris, again, he's a statue to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Just-
clip
it's
going
just an
viral
interesting
right
thing.
now where he gets where he's just kind of getting frozen by one of the Liga MX guys, and you know, it's in Mexico. It's going viral because it's oh, look what they did to a World Cup champion. You know,
Yeah.
any small victory they can post, they're going crazy for right now. The skills competition, anything is a big win for Liga MX. It's hilarious.
That had to be the Idrisi goal at the beginning of the game, right?
Yes, yeah. It was the Idrisi
Yeah.
goal. Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what
Yeah.
Garrett was referring to. I mean, I was like, he couldn't have maybe got a finger on that, or
Yeah.
maybe he just. I mean, maybe
So I
he
say
didn't
that
have
just to be
anymore.
like, if you think Tijuana can score, I'm going to back it, because I don't think that the LAFC defense has been as good on paper as my eyes have said. So
The one thing, and it's not gonna take me off it, Sebastian. Maybe you have some follow some guys that I don't. Sometimes I have an issue with some of these, not big time MX teams finding reliable injury news.
Yeah.
Tijuana has a striker, a Colombia guy named Zuniga, who I think is really, really a spark off the bench. And sometimes they run him and Carlos Gonzalez up top together. If he was available, which he never got hurt, but he just didn't travel last game. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? I can't find any information on that. It wouldn't take me off it, but I would like it a little more if I knew he was with the team.
Yeah, so I'm just reading a headline here. Apparently there was some type of like beef within the team, and he was separated from the group by Osorio, the manager, who is a hard-headed, again, mad scientist, kind of hard-headed guy. I'll open up the article and read here, but it looks like he has been
doghouse.
something happened with it. Yeah, something happened within like a training session or something. It's interesting because he's Colombian too, just like Osorio. So you'd think maybe they'd get along, but yeah, there's a confrontation, and apparently he's been blacklisted. That's according to TV Azteca.
Okay.
But Cooper, you know that I've said, if Reynoso was in his right mind and wanted to play, he would go down
Big
as
if. Big if.
It's a big if, but like,
I know. I feel you. I feel you.
New landing spot, that always can energize somebody for a little while. Reynoso would have been one of the best 10s that MLS has ever seen.
Sure.
Like that.
Sure.
Like
He
that
definitely
dude,
there were moments in Minnesota where you're like, dude, this guy's unplayable. Like,
yeah. And so if he is down to play, I will back whatever team he's on to score.
let me say one more thing too about Osorio. Carlos Vela is a name that any Mexico fan will be frustrated over, because there was never really a moment with the national team that he was that he was what he was supposed to be. But if there was ever a moment, it was when Osorio figured out how to build a team around him. He had a magical 10 with a beautiful left foot. And he figured out how to maximize the player and build a very effective team around it. And those are two different things. So again, I don't always trust Osorio in like the big games. He's had some classic meltdowns, but in terms of building a team and getting it playing well and getting guys to play well, he's definitely a good coach. He's definitely a very good coach in those regards.
Yeah, that's a good comparison there with Vela. And yeah, just real quick before we move on to the next one, Reynoso is definitely still in that honeymoon phase with Tijuana, so he is playing well. Like, he's out there doing Reynoso stuff. So we've got that going for us here. All right, moving on to our next game. This is one that we kind of talked about to kick off the show without getting into the actual game. You got Chivas, and this is going to be one of those hub privileges. It's going to be at Levi Stadium, home of the San Francisco 49ers. So this is Chivas and San Jose Earthquakes. This is a Chivas home game. I mean, this is going to be 80% at the minimum Chivas home crowd here. And Garrett, this is your play.
Yeah, I laughed when these lines came out and I saw where they were hanging this Chivas line, because I think it opened at plus 220 money line, plus 130 draw no bet. What we're playing here is going to be draw no bet, and it's going to be minus 125. That's how much this has moved already, and I would still play it at this price. You're giving me Chivas, a Liga MX stalwart, playable versus the worst side in MLS. And I don't know how you do not play this here. you talked about it. Chivas is going to be the home side, playing at Levi Stadium. It's going to be a rocking house there in San Francisco. And I don't understand it, man. We're looking at a San Jose side where they're looking at the worst goalkeeper core in the history of MLS, maybe. Like it is so bad. I'm running out of like terms to use for it. Now, they did get a slight win where they re-signed Emmanuel Ochoa, their 19-year-old goalkeeper, who, if he doesn't start at some point in this tournament, I think you see him after Leagues Cup start for San Jose. There's no reason to not start him. They turned down multiple Liga MX offers for this kid. He's in the running to having to choose between U.S. or the Mexican national side here sooner rather than later. Great. San Jose locked him up. They needed to. That was one guy they needed to keep. But they're just so bad, man. I mean, they're sitting dead last. They're probably gonna win the wooden spoon for MLS, and I'm getting the powerhouse that Chivas is, and I just don't understand it. And as a bonus, it's a Cade Cowell revenge game. So you can totally fire me up for an anytime goal or assist from him as well.
And he's red hot. I mean, he's got 3 goals and assists already in the 4 games so far in the Liga MX season. So, plus this game's at Levi's, is that right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a small Chivas home field advantage. It's going to be a big Chivas home field advantage. Yeah. What is that? What are you guys getting that at? You're seeing that plus?
So it opened at plus 130, like earlier in the week.
Yeah.
It's sitting at like minus 125, minus 130 now, and I would still happily fire at that number.
Sebi, this is draw no bet though, so this gives you some protection on the draw.
Right.
Oh yeah, no. If you're gung ho, that money line is still plus
one. Yeah, it's plus 140. I'm seeing it here, right? Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It's hard. It's hard to disagree with anything you say.
That's what we were talking about. Where sometimes these books just they just see Liga MX away, right? And like it's sometimes the algorithms don't take in all that. Like it's at Levi Stadium. You're going to have 40 to 50,000 Chivas fans there, right? Like that's more than most MLS teams have in their stadium on any given weekend. So it's like I said, for it to open at like plus 220, 230, and you see where it's dropped already. This is only going to continue to drop, by the way. Like
And you know what else? Chivas had a very bad Leagues Cup last year and they got killed for it in Mexico. And I think, sometimes internally priorities shift, or it's like, hey, this year we have a deuda. We have a debt to the fans, and I think the Chivas players will either know or have been told by their bosses that this tournament this year better not go how it went last year. We better get out of the group at least. So, yeah, man, I don't see. I mean, San Jose's last in the West for a reason. Like,
they're bad. Yeah,
they're bad.
They truly are bad. As bettors, we do sometimes try to find some positive regression, try to find a team. Well, their underlying metrics aren't quite as bad as their results, this and that. But then there's also something that just bad teams just find a way to lose games, right? And that's been the case with San Jose for basically the entire season. One more thing that I will throw on top of this. I've already said kind of like publicly on Twitter that, I think Chicharito it's not breaking news. He's kind of over the hill. He looks a little rusty, and that's being nice, right? But Chicharito playing his first game back on American soil here, since he left LA Galaxy in front of 80,000, you're going to get the best he has to give. There's going to be a little extra focus. There's going to be, extra support. I don't think that hurts you. I think that there's just too many factors here for Chivas in getting the push protection on the draw no bet. It's insane that it's still playable. This is a home game. So
where do you think this line closes? This
even
is
money.
This is the Saturday match.
Even money, probably.
I would expect somewhere right around there. Like, yeah, I mean they're a favorite now, and I think that just continues to grow.
Yeah, I think going from plus 230 opener to even money closer, it's a complete flip. I mean, all right, on to our next one. All right, off to Subaru Park in Philadelphia. This is going to be my second play of the show. Garrett did have a play on this one, but it got juiced out, so I'm kind of holding down the fort on this game. I'm going to go with an under here. I don't have too much to say about it. I'm going to be on the under 3. Sent this one out earlier in the week, but it's still playable. Obviously, Philadelphia have been in a lot of goal heavy games this season. They've been in some absolute shootouts, but Carranza is gone. I think he was really, really important for that attack. I mean, very crucial. Charlotte, with this being the first game of group play, I think the way that they have looked so far this season, I think they're going to be conservative here. And you got Dean Smith came over from the Premier League, right? He has whipped this team into shape pretty rapidly. I mean, even from the first game, I was on an over the first Charlotte game, and I was like, okay, that might be the last over I'm on Charlotte games, because they looked so night and day different from the 2023 version of Charlotte defensively. It was such an upgrade, such an improvement. Tack on that Vargas, he got injured last game for Charlotte. Abada, he's with Israel in the Olympics. So 2 key attackers are going to be missing for Charlotte here. And then again, the Charlotte defense, they're second best in goals allowed. It's not an anomaly. Their expected goals allowed is 4th best in MLS. So it is about what it should be. This is a good defensive team. I think we're going to see, probably 30, 45 minute feeling out period potentially. And to me, this feels like 1-0, maybe 1-1. But I could see this being definitely a low scoring affair.
So what if I told you I think it's just a repeat of the last time these teams met, where it's 2-0 Charlotte? Like Abada's at the Olympics, that's fine. They gave Swiderski the 9. Like, here was a guy who was loaned out to Verona. They were trying to get rid of him. He didn't have a good loan spell. The purchase option doesn't happen. He comes back, and so you just assume, okay, they're going to try to ship him out somewhere else. Like, he just wasn't in the plans. And then Dean Smith gives him the 9. So like, he's not going anywhere. So he's going to be your starting striker. And I mean, I don't know, he scores in his first game back. Like, so I don't think he's that good of a player. I don't know if he really fits with what Charlotte really, I think, want to do down the road, but they need attackers, right? Like you're going to keep him. Charlotte's defense is great. You talked about it. My play here was going to be Charlotte double chance. Like that was playable earlier in the week. But y'all know I try to get these lines as close to showtime as I can, so that way you're getting the similar lines. And by the time the show comes around, it's now like at -150, -155. And I don't love it enough to eat that kind of juice. But I do like Charlotte here. And if Charlotte wins, I think it's an under. Philadelphia doesn't impress me. They're not having a great season, and the only teams they really beat up on are teams with bad defenses. I mean, they destroyed New England 2 games ago, and then they beat up Zimmerman-less Nashville last game. When you look at these other home games, a lot of these home games don't have goals, man. When Philly's at home, and again, I think it could literally be a rinse and repeat of the last time they met, where Charlotte beat them 2-0.
Philly, to me, is one of the disappointments of the season. I think we were doing a segment on them because, everybody's hyping them up for Calvin Sullivan, and they're chanting, get the owner out, Sugarman out in the stands. And they're getting on Today's Show and Sports Center for things that, have more to do with like marketing plays. I know they've won 2 in a row, but they've just been like, every time you think, all right, I'm going to back Philly here. They've been a letdown this year. Every time you think they're going to like turn it around, they've just been a huge disappointment. So, it's hard to have any faith in the Union for a team that's been, again, so good for so long. This year's been a market fall off.
So good for so long. They backed that academy, right? They were like, those academy kids, that's going to take us to the next step. None of that really played out, and now all that midfield depth is at the Olympics. And so they're not going to be deep for this game. They've got their starters. It's good to see Blake back. That's a big bump for them. Also a big bump for your under having Blake back. We know when Blake and Martinez are in that 11, Philly's defense is just much, much better, right? And so I do like the under here. I lean Charlotte man, that double chance was playable for a while, and that was my favorite look here.
Right on. All right, we will keep it moving on to our next one, and this is a game we kind of touched on. I won't be able to make it to this one. I'll be at the next one versus Monterey, but I will definitely be watching.
So, yep, it's Pumas versus Austin FC. This is another Friday game. You could basically just rinse and repeat everything I said about the Chivas matchup for here, right? Like it's, I just don't know how you don't play one of the best Liga MX sides versus, in my opinion, a terrible Austin FC side. I do actually think Pumas are the home side here, actually, in this game, even though it's at Q2.
Yeah.
But I've talked about it a lot on this show. Austin's underlying numbers, whether it be home or away, they're just awful. Even though Austin have only lost three games at home this season, there's just not a world where I don't play Pumas at this price. Again, it's another one where they opened up at like plus 225, plus 230 money line, plus 135 draw no bet. And here we are at minus 115 for the draw no bet already. A line I expect to keep moving. Yeah, I'm going to take the value that we're getting on some of these really, really good Liga MX sides, especially when they're getting matchups against teams that I do not value at all in MLS.
Yeah, I love that. The money line Pumas is plus 155 when I'm seeing it. I mean, this is obvious to me. Austin is terrible, even when they're home, even when they're, officially home, but in that building, I'm sure you know it if you've been to a lot of the games. Like for whatever reason, that building doesn't bring the best out of this team. And this, Pumas is one of the grandes of Mexico. They are maybe not a team that in recent years has been like all that great, but they have a huge following here in the States. They're gonna have. My mom went to UNAM, so when they came here last year in DC, she was there, and there was a ton of Mexicans there in the stadium. So, they're gonna be. That's gonna be a real road game for Austin. And Pumas has some players, man. Gino Huerta's a guy who's kind of broken into the Mexican national team of late, had some links to Europe, maybe some talk of a move for him. Rubalcava's a good little winger who has a great story. He was actually playing like high school soccer in the United States, I think, a couple years ago before he moved to Pumas. So, and they're off to a good start in the Liga MX season as well. So I think 3 wins in their first 4. So, yeah, I mean, at plus money on a money line there, I mean, Austin's terrible. What are they? They're below the playoff line. I don't know how far below it they are.
They're sitting 10th.
And it should be a lot worse.
There you go. And I don't know. They haven't won too much in their last 5 or 6. So, yeah, Pumas is definitely on form. Also, just coming in way hotter.
Yeah, this Pumas team is probably, well, they're my dark horse to win Emeki. I mean, this is my. I think this is a year that they really take a big step. They obviously flashed some of that talent last year. They've got young talent. You talked about Huerta and Rubalcava. He just got back from a little stint he did in Belgium, and he's taking some steps. Then you got guys. They just got I don't even know how you pronounce him. The Peruvian kid, Quispe, I think maybe
Quispe, yeah.
So he just got back from Copa duty, which is important because they just lost Suarez. They're 10. He's probably going to be out for a while. They're really loaded. And then they got the striker Guillermo Martinez, he's been so good that he has actually displaced Funes Mori, who they brought in to be the starter. Martinez has ended up being the guy for them up top. So I think this.
You got some run in Copa America from Mexico too, and the frustrations were coming with Santiago Jimenez there. They threw him up there. He's just a big body that he's kind of been a journeyman his whole career, to be honest. But in the last 2 years, really, he's found consistent goals, and he's a profile that you don't really find in the MX. Certainly not from a Mexican, number 9, that big target guy. You used to have it in guys like Borghetti and all that, but currently in the Mexican pool and in Liga MX, that's not a player you see too much of.
Right. Yeah. And it seems to be a really great fit for this team because the service is there. So this has been a fun team to watch. I think they continue to excel. I think honestly, I think they beat the shit out of Austin. And I hope they do.
That said, like a true Austin FC fan right there.
Listen,
Yeah.
he is strong. Hashtag
Are you Wolf out?
So.
I was about to say we what's the Austin fan TV thing they got down there? We Are Austin TV or something. They're always I always see their clips, and man, they're always interviewing people on the way out of the stadium, and it's the Wolf out chants are getting stronger and stronger, and I think with more reason,
Yeah, I mean, I've said enough about it, but I wouldn't mind a fresh start.
I want to touch on Kirk's comment real quick because he does bring up an interesting point about taking some alt lines here with some of these, like I said, these stalwarts getting these good matchups in these first group games. Because if they do destroy Austin, destroy San Jose, you're not getting these prices again. Like we saw last year for Leagues Cup, books hung out huge money lines for these League MX sides and got killed in those first 2 rounds of group play. And then those lines shifted quick to where the value was gone.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, so I'm with you on this one. I actually sent out Pumas plus a quarter on the Asian line plus 0.25 when lines posted. But just like the Chivas line, this one has just been totally steamed. So I'm cool with the draw no bet. I think Pumas get it done. But all right, moving on to our last game analysis here, and then we will move on to some group futures and some outright futures.
All right, the Sunday game, we got Sporting Kansas City hosting Chicago Fire. And I'm going back to that Sporting KC over. You can't get gun shy. Over 3 here at -110.
I just got beat on that last weekend.
You and me both.
Yeah.
And so again,
freaking Berkey.
You've got Sporting. Man, he is the bane of over existence.
He's an overkiller, man. He's an overkiller, that guy. Jeez.
Kansas City games are hitting 3 or more goals at the second best rate of 77% in the league this season. There's goals to be had there, both in their attack and because of their defense.
Who hits more?
Dang, I just had it.
Portland, maybe.
They're second. Jeez. Yeah, Portland.
So Inter and Portland both go over.
Oh, Inter early on was a big wagon too. Yeah, they were
both have 3 or more goals at 80% of their games. So just ridiculous amounts. But yeah, so 20 of 26 of their league games have seen 3 or more goals. And then the Fire's numbers aren't that bad either. When they're on the road, they're seeing 3 or more in 62% of their goals. And so I'm just keeping this real simple. I'm not diving in. Kansas City's attack is relatively healthy. Agata's going to be in. Polito probably plays the 10 again. Russell's a question mark, but usually when Russell's a question mark, he goes, or he at least will make an appearance in the second half. Rarely is he just out. And then, of course, I think the Fire, we know it, man. Like, the Fire are not good. They're struggling. I don't know why you bring in Kuipers and don't get anyone who can create and get in the ball. But this Kansas City team can be scored on by anyone, and they can score on a lot of teams, including a Chicago Fire side. And so getting a over 3 here at a playable price where I've getting some push protection. Like I said, I'm not getting cute in these first group games with both teams to scoring over 2.5 or any team totals or anything like that. We saw last year that Leagues Cup, a lot of different things can happen, but one thing that held true was there were goals. And so I'm going to keep backing that trend here, especially against defenses that I like to attack until proven otherwise. And so just simple analysis here. I'm sticking with that percentage, going to keep running those Kansas City overs as long as they're playable.
Yeah, the one thing we've talked about it, and it's, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to know, like, I'm probably going to have to do it myself. I'm probably going to have to go back and dig into it and see how much better is the Chicago Fire team's attack in terms of XG and actual goals with and without Shaqiri on the field, because it seems like it's been so much better when he's not on the field.
Well, I said it last year, man. I was like, this team just plays better when Shaqiri's not in it. And if you
Plus, it
if you went
becomes
back and
Brian
looked at that,
Gutierrez'
and
team. He gets to do
Exactly.
his thing, and that
they were
kid's
hoping
special.
that he is special. I'm not sold that he's a 10, and that's what Chicago is really hurting for. And so that's I do. I think Gutierrez is special, and I think the Mexican national team is going to enjoy him at some point.
Honestly, it looks like it's trending that way.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, not a ton for me on this one. I mean, Sporting KC overs, so short and sweet, and we will go ahead and roll it into groups here. So, pretty similar format as last season. We got 15 groups, and then you got Club America and Columbus Crew. They get a bye to the round of 32, as well as Club America will have their hub privileges, and which we already talked about. But later as we go, we will get into how the groups feed into the bracket once we get to outrights. But we're going to start off with just some group futures. And I ended up kind of shuffling the order. That way it wasn't all of mine and then all of Garrett's, because they would have been in that order. So we're going to be bouncing around the bracket here. So just bear with us. But I'm keeping this one simple. I'm taking FC Cincinnati to win this group. Garrettaro, they had a little bit of a better year than normal last year, I'll say, and then they went and sold most of their best players. So I think that they, unfortunately don't have really a dog in the fight as far as this group, the East 1 group is concerned. And then obviously, I respect NYCFC, but I love the form that Cincinnati's been in of late. They seem to have kind of flipped the switch. Of course, they've been good all season, right? Obviously, it's also good that they went. I saw they got I think a Nigerian center back who's supposed to be arriving for Leagues Cup, if I'm not mistaken. So I think this one's simple. I'm going with the favorite to win this group. I'm going to lay just a little bit of juice and take Cincy minus 120 to win the group here.
I like Cincy to win the group if the U.S. under-23 team gets knocked out quick, because they need Robinson. That center back, he's coming, but it's hard to say when. Those visas can be tricky at times, and we've seen visas take 3 weeks sometimes to get processed. So will he be here in time to actually help in group play? I honestly don't know, but they need Miles Robinson. I mean, you look at games where they don't have Miazga or Robinson, and they bleed. This team bleeds. And so, yeah, for me, it is how quickly do they get Robinson back? Because, yes, you've got probably the MVP of the league in Acosta, and he's going to do Acosta things. But we're seeing, and just since these last 3 games, what that looks like when they can't stop the ball from going in their own net, where they've lost 3 straight. 2 of those, they've given up 3 goals. It's just 3 goals to Charlotte, man. Like, you look at that attack. Like, Charlotte's attack hasn't really been scary this season. And Charlotte punished them. Red Bulls punished them. So, yeah, that would be – I don't have – me personally.
Who do you think would win this group? I mean, like, would you trust New York City? Querétaro, I think, is not a real threat. They're not a real player. And I don't know. New York City doesn't win enough. They don't win games,
No. I think Cincy's the play. The reason why I would pump the brakes is because of the price. Like, if I'm not getting plus money for Cincy with a question around Robinson and just when that backline is going to get fixed, then it just makes me a little uneasy. Cincy's clearly, I think, the best team in this group, and I don't trust Cushing at all. Like, Cushing's not winning stuff. It is the price. Having to pay juice for a Cincy team that might leak in those first 2 group games. That's where you're rolling the dice. But they're clearly the better team here. If I was picking somebody in this group, it would be Cincy. Me, I'm laying off, but I totally get why Cooper's on it.
They'll also be at home for both of these games, which I think is a big deal, especially versus when NYC comes to town. And I think they're also capable of winning some shootouts. And this is it's a good opportunity for them to kind of reset after a couple of poor performances. But with that being said, yeah, I wouldn't mind getting some defensive help in.
Decisive game here is that August 5th Cincinnati New York City game. I mean, if they go on the group, the U.S. they're done on the 30th, which they just lost today, obviously 3-0. I'd be surprised. I think maybe they do get out and eventually. Then they'd be done in the quarters, would be my guess. So, I mean, if they do get out of the group, he's probably not back for then you're losing him for that game.
And that's the thing. It's all about the timing of when, because I believe he's right back in whenever they get knocked out. It is just win.
Yep. Because if they're done in France on the 30th, he's back by the 1st or 2nd. He's good to go for the 5th.
Yeah, 100%.
Right on. All righty, back to a group that we had a game on earlier. This is West 2. Garrett, this is yours.
Yes. So I'm going to back Chivas here at plus 230 to win the group. And I'm only going to take it for a half unit. So whatever you normally play, I'm only playing half of it here for Chivas to win the group. Only because this price is too enticing. I get it. It's the Galaxy, and they're very good. However, the Galaxy turned the ball over a lot. And so when I'm getting a team like Chivas at plus 230 to win the group, all I need is that LA Galaxy game to go bad. And Chivas runs away with this group. And with the way the Galaxy turned that ball over, they can give up as many as they score. And so it's just like, it's basically, I'm getting Chivas. The way I'm looking at it is I'm getting Chivas money line plus 230 against Galaxy pretty much. Actually, they don't have to win that game. They can still win the group. And so that's how I'm playing this, because I just need that game to go right and Chivas win this group easily. And so when I'm getting that kind of talent, I think it's worth the roll of the dice here. I've talked about Ricky and how much I just enjoy watching him play. But for everything great he does, he turns the ball over a ton. Like, he is a big reason why the Galaxy give up as many goals as they do. There was a reason when Ricky wasn't in for that 4-game stretch. The Galaxy won all 4 games, and that defense looked legit. I think they had 2 shutouts in that stretch. Fagundes was in the center, and he's disciplined. He's not leaving that space. Ricky's a roamer. His talent is going to demand that he roams. I get it. But when you turn that ball over and you're not defensively set up to stop that counter, you're going to get punished. And Galaxy have been punished in games this season. And I think Chivas are going to be one of the better teams they're going to see all year.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, personally,
that's such a tough game. I mean, that Galaxy Chivas game, just throwing on top of it the fact that it's like, it's a one-off. It's going to be it's a not StubHub. What do they call it now? Dignity Health. I just, and maybe this is my America ways. I'm not the biggest Chivas fan, obviously. Chivas against good teams struggle to be dangerous. And obviously, Cade Cowell's hot now. But, some of that's come against kind of the cannon fodder of Liga MX early on. And Alvarado has coming off a really, really good season. But you mentioned Chicharito before, and there's kind of a blunt edge to that Chivas attack at times. And the one thing I would say about the Galaxy is, there are profiles of players that you get in MLS that you don't get in Liga MX. And Painsel's like one of those guys for me that I think, like, Chivas back line, they better bring their freaking track shoes, because I could, or they might have to adjust how they play or whatever. But he's a guy who I could just see eating them up on the day. And all the things you said about Ricky Puig, he can be so dangerous and he's so good on the ball. But to me, the guy who could just kill Chivas there is Paintsel. I don't disagree with you. I think it's a good value in the group, for sure. But man, that's such a tough. And it does come down to that one game, because you figure they're both going to wipe the floor with San Jose.
100%. I mean, and there is a reason why the Galaxy are like minus 170 or something to win that group. Like, I get it, and I agree with you.
And that they're first in the West. They're doing something right.
I agree with you. Paintsel, I think, is going to be the X factor there. He's easily my favorite dude to watch. MLS just doesn't see guys like him. You talked about, like, Liga MX doesn't see guys like him. MLS doesn't see guys like him either. Like it's
Yeah.
just he is a special talent. I said it in the offseason. I was like, if they get this across the line, this is the deal. This is the best deal of the offseason, hands down. And it's turned out that way so far, in my opinion. And so yeah, that's why I'm keeping this small, a half unit. I'm not going crazy on it. It is strictly a value play for me.
Yeah, that's what really my main response was going to be. This is a price. This is a price play. Absolutely. This is a value play, because this is coming down to Galaxy or Chivas. I'm not particularly high on Chivas this year either, but I'm all for backing teams that can defend and fading teams that cannot defend. I'm all for that. And when you throw in a plus 230 here, I think it's a price play. And there's absolutely a world where the Galaxy back line and Ricky Puig, kind of recklessness and the way he plays does end up biting them. So yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a price play. I gotcha. All right. I could not find, this is West 4. Even though I couldn't find the English version. But just for our English viewers, this is West 4. This is going to be one of my group plays: Chicago Fire, Toluca, and Sporting Kansas City. I'm going with Toluca to win this group at a nice, tidy, where is it? There it is, -110. I like Toluca. This is a team that has been enormously successful in Mexico, and for some reason, I don't know if they get the respect they deserve. Obviously, they're not one of the big four, right? So maybe they don't have quite the same coverage. Obviously, this is a team. One of their big things is they play at a ridiculous elevation, like, other than, anything in Mexico or North America, the highest elevation of any club, it's like over 8,000 feet or just something wild, just something stupid. So, people call them altitude merchants or whatever you want to call this team. They're a good team. I like some of the moves they made. They brought in Paulinho from Sporting Lisbon in Portugal. Reports today is that they got kid from Brazil, from Fluminense, the Kenny or something like that, a striker. That, I don't know if he comes in and starts because their attack is not really an issue, but he bolsters it, he helps. And I just think they're far and away the best club in this group. I'm not worried about Sporting KC. They can't defend. They're just really not very good this year. They're old, and I think they're better than Chicago. I think they're the clear favorite here. Obviously they don't get a hub. They're not one of the teams that gets a hub, so they will be playing somewhat more road games. They're not going to have the same traveling fan base, but I just think Toluca is that much better than the other two teams in this group.
They're the only not bad team in this group. I mean, to be honest, I mean, this is the fact that that's playable is almost, shocking in a way. Obviously it's group phase, it's soccer, anything can happen, but, and it's interesting. It's interesting, Toluca, because we don't think you said it right. They're not one of the grandes, but they do have a lot of history. In the 90s and early 2000s, Toluca was very, very good. And there are those great Toluca teams created a generation of fans now. And a lot of those people do live here in the United States. So, and obviously, Chicago is very Mexican. I think Kansas City maybe less so, but the Mexican fan, they'll find the game. If they're within 2-3 hours, they're going to find it. So, I mean, Toluca's really good. I mean, they got Araujo who had a good start to the Copa before the injury for Uruguay.
Yep.
Alexis Vega, who's a guy who is a Mexico fan, frustrates you a lot, but at this level, I think he's pretty good. I like Toluca's manager a lot. Portuguese as well, Renato Paiva. He's a guy who's got like a lot of good ideas. And the Paulinho signing is an interesting one. He's 31. I don't know how much to expect from him, but they're always a threat in Mexico. That beyond the kind of big three that we think of now in terms of spending, America, Tigres, Rayados. Every year, if you had to pick a fourth to kind of throw up in there as as the next challenge. A lot of people would say Chivas because there's a lot of Chivas fans, but really on quality, it's usually Toluca. Like they've been pretty consistent in that way.
So
Yeah,
I just wanted to hear the take on Toluca from both of y'all before I play this, because I'm totally down to fade the fire in Kansas City. I just
Right?
need to know more about the Liga MX side. So I just took it right now because I just wanted to hear the feedback from Toluca, and yeah, I'm good with this. Yeah, fire it up.
Yeah, they're also relatively deep, and you know, a lot of these MX sides obviously, you know, are deeper than the MLS sides. We've talked about that for years, right? But this Toluca side in particular, one guy goes down, they bring another guy in, you know, basically same level, and that's not something that could be said for all the clubs. So I think they're at a big advantage. And the one thing I didn't know about that I was kind of encouraged to hear Sebastian talk about was that they do have some traveling fans, and obviously with the game being in Chicago, yeah, those guys are going to get out to the game, right? So I think that's a big plus that I wasn't so sure about, but it makes me feel a little extra confident in this play.
And if they are bringing in Kennedy, as you talked about,
Yeah, Kennedy.
that's not a nothing signing. That's going to cost them. Now, of course, I think we know League MX spend a little more on a per player basis, I think, than MLS. But Kennedy's not nothing, man. Like I don't cap Brazil, but I do watch it. It's one of the other leagues I get to enjoy because I like to space out my leagues at different times, and some of these Brazil games go early in the afternoon, midday. So I'll catch those. Kennedy's got talent. Like he will contribute to this side if they are indeed bringing him in.
Cool. Alrighty, on to our next group here. We are going to be looking at East 3, and this is one of yours, Garrett.
Yeah, I just listen. I'm saying this with the perspective of I think there is a world where Messi does not play in this tournament. Like I think that is a world.
100%.
And so I say that to preface to be like, I'm still taking Miami at -120 in this group. Yeah, there's no way I'm not pulling that trigger. I have not enjoyed Tigres for years, even though I know they're great. However, that team does what American teams also do, where they wait too long to tear it down, and that team is old. And Cooper can speak more to this. I think Puebla's could be a wild card here, but I don't know enough about them. However, Miami's just going to find gateways to win. There is not a world where MLS doesn't want Miami through to the group. Not that I'm saying that anything's rigged or fixed. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like this works out where Miami's going to have the support it needs. And so, yeah, at -120 or -115, happy to take Miami here, knowing that there's a world where Messi doesn't play in this tournament.
Bold. I love it. Listen, I don't disagree with some of the stuff you're saying about Tigres. I've been saying it for a while. Actually, some of their managers that have left have said it on their way out the door that basically the team is too old. And specifically the guy we're looking at on the graphic here, who's their talisman, the guy who at the end of the day has to kind of put the finishing touch on all their moves. Gignac, he's not been himself. He's not been as ruthless, as efficient as, you know, basically what he was since the day he walked into Liga MX in 2015. For the last year, man, he has been just that little bit off. I know Inter Miami, I know they, what was it, 6 or 7 without Messi and Suarez over the Copa break. I know they won that. I know they got some guys who are playing really, really well right now. But without Messi, and I really like, if I'm doing the math here, if I'm Inter Miami, I'm sitting here looking at this and being like, we've got Leagues Cup. We have 9 games on the back end of Leagues Cup to get the supporter shield, which we need for a playoff run, right? Like everybody needs it, but for the old guys, they want to be at home. It really improves their chances of winning the thing that matters, which is MLS Cup. I think they want that double, and I think that's got to go into the decision making around Messi in these 2 games. And I don't know, man. If Messi's not on the field against Tigres and Tigres has everybody, it would be so hard to pick against Tigres. It'd be so hard. but it's a gutsy call. It's a gutsy call.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought the same thing when I saw it. I see where Garrett's coming from here. And one thing I will say about Miami that I personally kind of whiffed on, I was fading this team without Messi. I was like, nah, like there's no Messi. Messi's the team, right?
Well, for a
No,
while that worked. I mean, they won what, 3 of 12 of their first 12 without him. I mean,
Yeah.
but you got to give Martino credit, and I hate to do that as a Mexican and what he did with the national team, but he's really over this stretch proved that he can have them up and running without Messi and Suarez. I mean, and they look good. I mean, some of the games are kind of eking out, but they're good at eking out games, and that's something that is worth something too in these competitions.
And to be fair, in that first run through where they didn't have Messi and they were dropping a lot of games, they didn't have Rojas, they didn't have Redondo, they didn't have these
Gomez. Diego Gomez, man.
And so Gomez is another one where which luckily today's result helps. I need Gomez back. I need him. I need him out of the Olympics and back on this team. But they just keep churning out these under 22 kids who just become like you feel like it's diamonds in the rough, but every one of their guys are hitting it just about. I think Aviles is the one that's like, well, I don't know, man. Like he's still pretty raw. Like I don't know how he's going to turn out. I mean, but Rojas hadn't played since February when they found him and they brought him in, mainly part of it for injury. But like teams that just cast him off and they bring him in and he instantly turns into a playmaker for them. Yeah, it is. I think Tata, man, he outside of Nancy, I don't think there's a better coach in the MLS.
And you know what he is that's better than Nancy is he's also basically your scouting director. I mean, at Atlanta United, if you go back and look at that team, like a lot of those guys were Tata pulls or Tata influences. Oh, this guy's connected to Newell's. This guy's here. Almiron's from Paraguay. And, in Paraguay, they think Tata Martino's, the second coming. So he was all fired up to play for him. Then you throw Messi into it. And then you got to give Inter Miami credit because it's kind of annoying to do. But they're spending money on these guys. Like they're throwing $8 million at teams in Argentina. And you're gonna get some talented young players if you're willing to splash the cash down there, because that economy is where it is relative to kind of the MLS economy, and MLS is usually shopped well in Argentina, but right now, it used to be that they could go down and shop effectively for like mid-20s, late 20s. Now you can go down there and raid the prospect pool. And Gomez is an incredible example. They're going to flip him in months. Forget years. They're going to flip him in months and sell him to the Premier League. I mean, if all this is true. So yeah.
No, yeah, you'll keep raiding Argentina if you can go down there and find a Gomez and flip him for 15 million. Like in less than a year, you'll keep doing that.
And Tata Martino's got the contacts to not whiff as much, to
100%,
to make sure that money that they're spending is is a pull. And Messi's a differentiator. If you're telling a kid, we want you to come to MLS instead of Europe, it's a very different, proposition when it's, we want you to come to MLS and play with Messi instead of Europe. And they're, again, it's kind of annoying to give them credit, but they're using their cheat code effectively. They're maximizing it, and they absolutely should.
Yeah. That's a great point you make about young guys coming to play with Messi. When I look at this group, I look at Tigres, and they're one of the teams that are getting that hub privilege, right? And then I look at this wager. So let's say, because look, Miami's going to have to go to NRG in Houston, and they need a draw, because I think if they get a draw, they probably score more goals on Puebla than Tigres is going to score on Puebla, because I don't really think the attack is, and plus Tigres is not really set up to score 3, 4, 5 goals on teams very regularly. They're kind of a defensively sound team first and foremost. And then, outside of that, I told Garrett couple of days ago, I do think Tigres this is the year that we see them somewhat fall off the cliff. I don't think they're really a contender in MX. Father Time is undefeated and they are old as hell. So I think that is going to play a role, and having, they've obviously got Ibanez backing up Gignac, who just hasn't really fit the system. And so it's like, if this is the year Gignac just doesn't produce, which that's not going to matter anyway, because they're going to run him out there until he decides to leave the club, basically. So that's kind of null. But I think Miami, they get a draw in Houston. I think that they go through here.
That Houston game, the one thing I'll say, having lived in Houston a couple years, and obviously, Tigres is one of the northernmost teams in Mexico. There's a huge, both Tigres and Rayados fan base in Houston, huge. So, and if at NRG, that's 80,000 huge. So
the one thing that I'm back from Miami on this one is you got to counter that Liga MX, crowd, right? The one thing in MLS that could counter that crowd is the Messi crowd.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's such a good question, right? Because it basically comes down to who's willing to pay more for the ticket. And Messi is Taylor Swift in that way, where parents will pay whatever it takes to get their kid in the door. But it's not necessarily their passion. The Tigres fan, it's like they're spending the money that they've earned that week. It's truly their passion. So I mean, you're right. Who's at the end of the day, who's willing to pay more? People are definitely wanting to see Messi, but I'm telling you, in Houston, there's gonna be a lot of yellow in NRG. It's gonna be a lot of yellow for sure.
No doubt. No doubt.
And MLS Digest is correct. I just saw his comment. He is correct with the format.
Let's see. I want to know if the draws go to penalties with the winner getting an extra point. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. So adds a little more variance to this bet then. Absolutely. All right. Moving on to our next one here. This is going to be mine. East 2. You got Montreal, Orlando City, who has been a huge disappointment for the most part. I mean, this is a team that many folks had as a contender. They just haven't. I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, they had the squad, and then you got Atletico San Luis. This is going to be my value shot for the show. I'm taking Atletico San Luis to win the group at plus 500. I didn't put it on here, but this is going to be a half unit play for me. I should have distinguished that, but half unit play on San Luis to win the group. Look, I think San Luis is being priced as a Querétaro or a Puebla or some of the worst teams. I don't think they're that bad. I think that they have a talented attack. They got Bonatini. They got this young kid Kilmowitz, who came from the Stuttgart Academy in Germany. He's 24 now. He's starting to blossom. The midfield is good. They've got some speed with Vitinho out there. And they've got good guys off the bench too. So this is a team. In fact, I think they opened the season. Yeah, they beat Club America 2-1 to open the season. And I'm sure you watched that game, Sebastian. It wasn't really an unfair result. I mean,
no. America usually starts the Liga MX season a little bit slow. And we're definitely missing some guys that look at me making my excuses. But yeah, no, I mean, and San Luis is also, I think, I like the way you describe them. They're maybe thought of as they're a newer team, and they're thought of maybe as a little bit of of a cellar dweller in Liga MX. But they're a really solidly well-run organization. They seem to have they've done some good work in recent years. So there may be a little bit more value there than what you're getting from the odds makers. I love Orlando City, man. I've loved them for the last couple years. I was high on them last year and kind of got let down. I think once the playoffs started, I had them winning the East. Obviously didn't happen. It was close, things can kind of broke against them. Could have gone their way. This year they've been a huge disappointment, but I mean, I do think on paper they're the best team in this group, if not the best value.
I think
I was
Orlando
on.
City is
Go ahead.
what's the price on them to win the group? Aren't they like minus 190
Minus
or something?
165.
Okay.
They're
Yeah,
165 right now.
unplayable, really.
So I wish that Montreal actually traveled in this group because they are away at Orlando, but then they're going to be the away team at their stadium when San Luis comes to play. So because Montreal is super fadeable on the road anywhere, I don't care where they're traveling. They go next door. You can fade them all day. But yeah, this is, and you know me, man. I'm not a big Orlando City fan. As soon as they brought in Luis Morel, I was out. Like Muriel, like I said, as soon as they brought him, I said, toast, man. That dude is burnt toast. And that is exactly what it's proven. And that was me thinking Maguire's gone, right? Because the Blackburn deal was done. Like he was already flying over there. That falls apart. He ends up staying. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm back on the Orlando train with Maguire staying. And because I told you, Maguire's not losing that starting job. Like they can pay Muriel whatever they want to. He's not beating up Maguire, and he hasn't been. Maguire is at the Olympics though, right? And so that's going to hurt him here. Orlando should win this group. That's the should. But I think you could literally put every name in a hat and swirl it around, and whoever you pull out has a chance of coming out of this group.
Yeah, so take the team that's 5-1, right?
I don't hate it. Like I know nothing about that team, and so like if you're like, yeah, they have just a chance. I do not hate plus 500 with a little sprinkle. Again,
I feel like that's the case in a lot of these groups. Like there's two teams you can't trust out of MLS and a team out of Liga MX that, I mean, obviously we're saying it from like a mostly American perspective, you might not know much about, but really, even if you're a Liga MX fan, you don't know much about. We're 3 games into a season. Teams are still kind of coming together. Like there should be, as you look at the groups, like there's a lot of groups that are just like this one where you're almost picking between poisons, you know, and a lot of times the Liga MX poison, like we haven't seen it go down the hill yet, right? We're only 3 or 4 games into the story. We don't know. Whereas with some of the MLS teams, we have seen all the warts. You know, we've seen all those warts already for 2-3 months now. I'm looking at this Nashville, New England.
Why are you looking at the worst group in the tournament?
I'm the
worst group in the tournament.
I'm thinking. I'm curious. I don't have the group futures in front of me. I'm curious who's the favorite in that group. How the hell did Vegas choose
Nashville
a favorite?
Nashville is minus 120 for that group.
Honestly, I mean, fair play. I think that makes sense. It's playable.
You're paying minus 120 for Hani Mukhtar. Like that's basically what it is.
I mean, and even like Nashville is terrible. I mean, Nashville coming in is awful. They're losing games.
And you're bringing in
big time goals. No Zimmerman.
No Zimmerman. You're bringing in a coach that no one knows about. Like, well, I don't know what BJ's going to do. BJ's never been a head coach before.
You know what though? He did get the US, up and humming pretty quick. I don't know. Yeah. It's a good value on Nashville. It feels like, but it's just, again, you're to not get plus money on some of these teams, to trust these teams on not plus money just feels really not risky, but feels like you're going out on a limb.
Alrighty.
Which group did we just break down, Cooper? We just broke down what was it? The East 5.
Yeah, I told you we're jumping around here, but this is speaking of plus money, here's another one, and this one is I'm right here with you on this one, Garrett.
Yeah, it's just the price, and it's moving depending on what book you're on. But I'm going to take Cruz Azul here. I think Philly, like I said, Philly's a team that I'm looking to fade when they play good teams. They haven't done well. Charlotte is the dark horse here, although I'm okay not backing Charlotte with the kind of talent that I'm going to see on this Cruz Azul side. And so to get them at this kind of price at plus 160 to win the group, that just feels good. I mean, they're being priced as the same price as Philadelphia Union, and that makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't know why Philadelphia Union are the same price to win the group as Cruz Azul. And then you got Charlotte hanging out there at plus 240, plus 250. Like I said, more of a dark horse. I'm a big Dean Smith fan. I like where this Charlotte team, I like its trajectory. I like where they're going. But yeah, Cruz Azul is one of those sides that we talked about. It's gonna be a neutral site for them. They're a hub club. And so yeah, at plus 160, this feels really good here in the East.
I don't think it's going to be very neutral. Mexico, the national team's been playing in Charlotte more and more and more and more over the last years. There's a reason for that. Soccer United marketing, they're not dumb. They know that Charlotte's a place where you can get Mexican fans who will drive from, Washington, D.C. They'll drive down to it. They'll drive up from Florida. And Cruz Azul is uno de los grandes. They're another one of those big boys, been around forever. Tons of people, generational, fan support here in the United States, national teamers. That's gonna be a Cruz Azul spot for sure. And they're playing about as well as anybody in the MX right now. I mean, again, very short sample size early on, if we're just going off this season, but if they I don't think they've conceded once, maybe once so far this season. They put up some big numbers too. They're definitely the class of this group.
Yeah, and just kind of a side note, they're still playing at Estadio Azul, I think, which is not, that's not their normal stadium, but they've kind of made it a little home away from home there.
It's their historic. So they always played there. Then they went to Azteca when they were like doing some remodeling.
Okay.
And now Azteca's getting remodeled because they're doing some planning for 2026. And so they kind of forced Cruz Azul to go back to the Estadio Azul, which is kind of one of the older stadiums in Mexico City. It's actually only a couple blocks from my grandmother's house where my mom and my uncles grew up. Yeah. So got a lot of love for the Estadio Azul there in Mexico City. Right next to the big, like the central bullfighting ring in Mexico City.
Oh man,
those two stadiums are right next to each other.
That's good stuff. Yeah, I just want to clarify though, Cruz Azul is not a hub team because they were not one of the top 4 in Mexico going into the season. Obviously, you could make an argument that they are now, but they're not a hub team. Now that game in Charlotte will definitely feel like a home game, but they are technically on the road at Charlotte and then at Philadelphia. And again, that may be what the odds makers have done here. Just slap some cookie cutter odds on this one instead of, Cruz Azul is probably going to be the home side. No, they pretty much just slapped it with some cookie cutter odds.
I would bet a lot of money that Cruz Azul has a majority of the fans in both those games.
Oh, I would bet I would bet your money, my money. I bet all the money. I mean, Phil, people like as a Mexican American, I say this because I used to think like, oh, Chicago, LA, Texas, that's where the Mexicans are. But anywhere you put a big Mexican soccer brand in this country, you draw a really strong crowd. And Philadelphia it's on the East Coast. I mean, it's on the Eastern Seaboard. You're within 2 hours of everything in Philadelphia. So it's going to be no problem for them to get in there. And the other thing is who are they fighting for those tickets? The Union have won 6 games this year. So
right.
and that's including the 2 that they've just won on the bounce coming in here. So
I think
the Union fans care.
Terrorize this group.
Yeah, and let's talk about
he's
this.
Got some anti-MLS or maybe he's got some type of chip on his shoulder because like the first press conference he did down there with Cruz Azul was like taking shots at MLS, and I was like, all right, dog, who hurt you?
That's funny. Yeah, and then might as well touch on kind of a cherry on top here as far as fading some of these MLS clubs. How many supporter sections are boycotting this tournament? I mean, that's not going to help the MLS cause.
No, it's something to certainly mention. There are quite a few supporter fan groups now, not all of them, and not all of them.
St. Louis, I know, was one of the first, right? I just remember that the St. Louis fans were one of the first to kind of.
A couple of your bigger MLS sides definitely have 1 or 2 groups boycotting, which is only going. I mean, that's fine. Like this is not Leagues Cup is not going anywhere. Like there's a reason why MLS is willing to literally light the US Cup on fire and let it burn because of how much money Leagues Cup generates. So it's not going anywhere. Those tickets are still going to get bought. I get what some of the supporter groups are doing, but it's also not a unified issue, right? Like it is individual supporting groups that are taking these boycotts. Even on, like I said, for individual teams, not all their supporter groups are boycotting. So
Right.
no, yeah, it's it needed to be stated, but yeah, it's those tickets are still getting bought.
Yeah, it'll have some impact on the atmosphere, but 1/10 of the impact of the fact that they're playing Liga MX teams. That's going to have a way more impact on the atmosphere because that's what you're going to hear in the stands. You're not going to notice the absence of the people whose tickets were bought by others who are screaming.
Right.
Unfortunately, I love the U.S. Open Cup dearly, and I'm all for any fan protests, that defend the Open Cup, but yeah, it's I don't think they're gonna have any trouble moving the product, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. On to the next one here. And this is looks like a competitive group on paper. Got the Rapids, Club Leon. Obviously, they've got some history of playing games here in the States, and the Portland Timbers. I'm going to take a little shot. This is another half unit play for me. This is not one I'm uber confident in by any means, but I'm going to back Timbers here. Timbers kind of have I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the historic stadium, I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for this team. And it seems to kind of follow me around from year to year. I like the organization. I like how they build it. And I thought they were going to be abysmal this year. And they've got some things going for them. And they've been playing really well lately. Jonathan Rodriguez, obviously they went and got him from your squad, from Club America, and he has fit in nicely. And this team is humming right now. Obviously still have some defensive issues. I think we talked about it a couple shows ago. They have the highest percentage of both teams to score at their home field of anybody in Major League Soccer. Number one. It's like north of 90%. It's something just absurd how often both teams to score happens when they're the home side. But at the plus 190, I'm willing to take a stab at it. The Rapids are your favorite in this group. Look, I side with Portland on this one. Club Leon, I'm not very high on. I've watched 2 of their games this season. It's obviously, the season just started, but I think they're going to have a down year. I don't know what they were thinking, firing their coach last season, the Argentine guy. I thought he was maybe the best coach in the league. I was a big fan of that guy. I'm not sure what the details were there. You may have better insight than me, but I thought that was a kind of a funky situation.
Yeah, I think the shelf life in Mexico is just shorter. There's not the not necessarily the, how do we say it, the patience, commitment, when things kind of go off the boil, there's rugs pulled pretty quick. I like the Portland call here. I mean, I think Colorado's just kind of a little bit of a fluke, if I'm being honest, this season. And I think they lost recently, but they had 5. I think they won 5 of 6 Timbers, maybe within the last couple weeks or so. So yeah, they've got the talent, So I think once you see them turn it around and kind of maybe have that identity a little bit more under Neville, kind of get the idea of what he wants to do. But this is one of those fun groups for me because honestly, like it wouldn't shock me if any of these 3 won it. Really.
Here's what I'll say about Portland. It's dumb that they're this price when they get both home games. Like both games are at Providence and Park. So like this price is silly to me. And I'm not a Neville fan. I'm also not a Chris Armas fan. Like I don't think either coach is good. But we've seen teams when you have a generational player, and when we've seen Evander, when he wants to play, he is a top 5 player in the MLS when he wants to play, when he's out there. And then you just add, you talked about it, Rodriguez, who is just fitting great there. I didn't expect him to play the left wing like he's doing. And I mean, he's thriving. The Rapids will be out. Will be without Mihailovic as however long the U.S. is in the Olympics. That's a decent loss. Cole Bassett has filled in nicely in that spot while Mihailovic has been away. Definitely, maybe he says not bitter but better. Like, don't get bitter, get better, because he was pretty much the last guy to get cut from the Olympic squad. But yes, you can't put plus 190 when Portland gets both games at home. That's a bad price.
Plus Colorado, no Mihailovic, right? So
yeah, no Mihailovic. He's with the Olympics. And then also I've been seeing some rumblings. Who's the kid, the big center back? He's been like their best defender.
Bombito.
Is he out? Is he sold yet or what?
No. Leon has not paid the price yet.
Can we get him out of here before Leagues Cup?
Rapids are trying to keep him like this. So if a deal gets done, this feels like if a deal gets done this summer, it feels like a deal similar to where they keep him on loan till winter. Like Bombito finishes the season out at the Rapids before making the move to
kind of like what they're talking about with Gomez and Inter Miami, right?
100%. Yeah. Like,
Bombito,
and that's
what a story. That dude's come out of freaking nowhere, man.
To come out of nowhere, to being like the starter for the Canadian national team. Like it's not just his MLS play. He's taken over the Canadian national team. It's great, man. It is great what he's doing. Lots of fun. Yeah, this price is silly. Giving Portland 2 games at home, that alone is worth this price.
The manager you were talking about, Nicolás Larcamón, the Argentine, he was for a minute like because he started at Puebla, kind of the popular managers in Mexico, and was getting named when the national team opening would come up. His kind of final straw was the Club World Cup, which I always love this because it also Javier Aguirre, who's now coming back to the national team, he had 2 years ago a bad Club World Cup with Monterrey and came back and got fired. And it's like, never would that happen in MLS. Like in MLS, you go to the Club World Cup, it is your achievement. But in Mexico, if you go to the Club World Cup and you lose before the semis, like before you get to face the South American or the European teams, you kind of come back humiliated, and having like humiliated not just your club, but Mexican football too. And I think that's what kind of ultimately cost him the gig at Leon.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that guy. Love his tactics. Kind of
young guy. Yeah. I think he's in Brazil now.
Yeah, you watch the way that they operate. It's not exactly like what Nancy has done at Montreal and Columbus, but it's a similar big swings, getting leverage, 2s on 1s, 3s on 2s, getting it wide. It's definitely fun to watch when that Leon team is good. But all right, moving on here. Got E6. We are jumping around.
All right, so I'll try to get through this a little faster because I know we've been on for a minute. This one for me is Red Bulls at even money. Pachuca scares me a little bit. Toronto doesn't, though. I'm comfortable with how the Red Bulls are going to be with them, and so to be able to get even money with the Red Bulls, yeah, that's where I'm laying my money here.
Love this. Love this. There's some rumblings now in Pachuca. Just this week, it's funny you mention it, because they are a good team, and actually the graphic that they've got here needs to be updated because Chiquito Sanchez now plays for Club America. So that's one thing, right? That they have had some sales over the summer, and Chiquito Sanchez is, I think, one of the guys that people would point to as the best players. They've got a great coach in Guillermo Almada. He was actually linked with the national team job, but he's one of these dudes who wins but burns through places. And the last 2 weeks in Mexico, there's been a lot of reports coming out of Pachuca that the players are kind of like tired. And, they had great success, CONCACAF Champions Cup, etc., but they're tired between not just the manager, but also the club itself. And it's worth noting, Pachuca, the owner of Pachuca also owns Leon. Which sometimes people point to the fact that Leon has fallen off recently as part of like that. That's the reason for it, because the guy is it's Grupo Pachuca. Like the guy's team is Pachuca. Jesus Martinez is the owner. But yeah, so I think Pachuca right now is just in a weird spot, and people see them and they say, "Hey, CONCACAF Champions Cup winners, Mexican team coming up." You know, it pains me as a DC United fan to say this, but I do like what the Red Bulls have done so far this year. And Pachuca, for whatever they are, they're not like a huge, they don't have a huge following, I don't think, outside of Mexico. So, they'll have some fans for sure, but not in the way that you would expect from some of these other clubs. So if it is even money, I think Red Bull are the play here. I really think Pachuca right now is just in a moment where they're vulnerable, especially playing so far from home.
Yeah, good info there. Yeah, I'm with you here, G. I'm very high on New York Red Bull. I wish we knew a status on Forsberg. I'd love to have him back for group play, but I'm not sure what's going on there.
You'll see him. They're just going to be cautious, man. They brought him back, and he just immediately got injured again with that foot, and so they're going to be cautious. I don't know if you see him in group play. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. This is a Portland situation where Red Bulls host both games. So yeah, it's just a really, really good spot for them. And then I love the Pachuca information we just got. Like that was the team that was going to scare me here. So
they also just sold off. I mean, he wasn't as critical as Chiquito Sanchez, but one of their other like young, very solid players, right back,
Alvarez,
like center midfielder, who went to where did he go to? Somewhere in Spain. Emil Rodriguez is the kid's name.
Oh, okay.
And it's like one of these 21-year-olds that they're finally trying to get over to Europe because Mexico doesn't really export a whole lot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he went over to Celta in Spain to their like B team. Anyway.
Oh, okay. That's where I think that's where Bogus came from, if I remember. He came from somewhere. I think it was Celta, but all righty. On to our next one here, Garrett. This is going to be yours as well, and then I'll round us out with one more after this group.
Yeah, a pleasant surprise for Sebastian here, where I'm going to be on DC United. I'm just taking them for a half unit, but at plus 175, this feels like it could be DC United's group. We've talked about the defense. The defense is the issue, but neither one of these teams are going to be able to defend Benteke. And so, like, if he takes over this group, then this is DC's group to lose. So it's just a little bit of a value play here with me. Atlanta's the favorite, but at only plus 110. I talked to you a little bit about Santos Laguna, and I was just curious, like, hey man, some of these clubs I don't know anything about. And you just like just said, don't worry about it.
Yeah, they're terrible. They never score. That's all you need to know. They never freaking score.
And so basically, for me, it comes down to between DC United and Atlanta. And I don't know.
You're taking DC United. It's basically a money line play on DC United, or I guess they could tie the game in Atlanta, but because that's what it comes down to, right? Is the first game in Atlanta. That's the one thing that scares me is if from a DC standpoint is having to go to Atlanta. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. What's the odds for Atlanta?
Plus 110. Now, today's news with Miranchuk, like that could change a little something. I just don't know if he gets there in time for group play, right? To be able to like actually make something out of this. So that's more of a wait and see. But this Atlanta side is going to be playing without DPs. And like that's just, I've seen Benteke take over a game in Atlanta. Like I've seen it. And so, if he wants to do that here, I just think this is a nice value play on DC United.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think obviously these odds would be flipped if DC was hosting the first game. I mean, that's the reason the odds are the way they are. But I think this is a good opportunity for DC to kind of have something new to focus on. I mean, the season's long.
Salvage the season. I mean, they're like, this was supposed to be a kind of turnaround year. I think a lot of people were hopeful. And they're kind of wasting Benteke's campaign. I mean, it feels like as a fan, you look at the numbers and you're like, this guy's doing exactly what you would have wanted, exactly what you would have hoped from somebody in his position. And they can't win a game. They can't take advantage of it. So I like him to kind of take over this group, and like when they play Santos, I mean, you don't talk about profiles that they don't have in Mexico. They ain't never seen Benteke. They ain't never seen Benteke. Nothing like that, you know. So those
This
defenders
is
are going to be in
definitely
for a
going to
world of
be
hurt.
this is definitely going to be sweaty. Like this is not an easy play by any means. This is why, like you could even play for a half unit if you were like if you weren't really feeling it. But it's yeah, I'm not gonna back Atlanta until they bring in however they're gonna re-envision that team, which is important to note. Miranchuk he's that type of player that you're bringing in your prime with the expectation, I don't think, to sell. Like he could be your 10 for 5 years, 4 or 5 years there in Atlanta and kind of build a foundation around, which is exciting for later this season to see if Atlanta can salvage the season at all and really make a run, or was this season full on sell and you know we're going to rebuild between now and the winter and we'll come back next season and really be challenging for stuff. But yeah, I couldn't pass up the price on DC.
Right on. All right, on to our last group here. Got Atlas, the other team from Guadalajara, Houston Dynamo, and RSL. And this is mine. I'm taking the Dynamo to win the group here. So obviously they went and got Ezekiel Ponce, striker from Greek Super League. You know, I don't know if he's a world beater, but they needed somebody that was a good striker to come in and be a good striker, and I think they have him now, because up until, I mean, that's been the issue, right? They can't create, they can't score. Defensively, they've been you know, top 5 defense, and any metric you want to look at, analytics or just goals allowed, and all that good stuff. They've been a great defense. They're organized. Hector Herrera has been back from injury for you know, a month and a half now, so he's full strength. I've always been a big fan of Carrasquilla, the Panamanian. So they are healthy for the most part, other than Quinones, who got hurt in the preseason, and now they've got their striker. They're the only team. Well, Atlas can defend a little bit. I'm just not really. I'm not too worried about Atlas in this group. I think that traveling for them is you know, they're one of those Mexican clubs that's going to have a harder time traveling than some of the ones we talked about. So I think this is between the 2 MLS clubs in this group, and I'm a big fan of RSL. I mean, that attack is absurd. They're super fun to watch. I'm just going to take the team that knows how to defend in this group, and they also are going to be the home team against RSL in the second group game. And yeah, I think Houston gets this one done. I don't trust RSL defensively.
No travel for Houston. I like that. I like Ben Olsen in a tournament setting. I think he's proven that while maybe and I'll hold my hand up here and acknowledge he used to be my neighbor down here in downtown Washington. So I got a soft spot for Benny in my heart. But I think, you know, people kind of knocked him as a manager, and his teams maybe were limited here, but he figures out a way in knockout competitions to kind of get his team through, get more out of his team than maybe their station in the world. And I like that value for sure here. And I think also I'm with you on Atlas that I don't think they're a real threat here. And RSL kind of for me is also another team that I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know, a little bit. Like I know they just beat Houston maybe a month or so ago, but that's, you know, oftentimes in MLS you get to this time of year and somebody will be high up in their conference and you're like, is that team really that good? And by MLS Cup or by the end of the season, things have come back to form. Maybe I'm being too harsh on RSL here, but I'm not necessarily convinced that they're as good as their start to the year has said they are.
All right, Garrett, set us straight, buddy. Let us have it.
I think you're saved by Arango being suspended for the first group game. Like, can RSL still win that game? Sure, maybe. But I think RSL is as good as they have looked across the board. I mean, they're the 5th best attacking team in the MLS when you look at the underlying numbers, like expected goals, all that stuff. I mean, they are right there with the other teams just scoring in bunches. That's, you know, LAFC, Colorado. Those other teams are just scoring a ton. It does help like I said, this is where you get a good price for a team that's at home, right? And so that's what hurts them. The suspension hurts them. I think if they can handle Atlas though, and you get Arango back for Houston, I don't know, man. That's I'm not a fan of Potts. I don't like 26, 27, 28-year-old striker journeymen that have been around in lower leagues in Europe and then come to MLS. It doesn't translate well historically. But they didn't have a 9, right? Like it was once they got announced that Pons was coming, Ferreira was like, okay, I guess I'll start scoring now. And he just needed motivation, I guess. But like that's another story in of itself. They didn't have a 9. They needed a 9. But I'm not super high on this Houston team. I don't know, man. I don't like teams that don't really have Houston feels like they're good at a lot of things, not a master at anything, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so those teams for me struggle to go far in something like this. Like you need those elite sides who really know who they are and how they play and are just going to beat you that way. Those are the teams that I see make good runs. And so yeah, this is tough, man. If RSL can get past Atlas without Arango, I think Houston has their hands full. I don't hate the price by any means. Like plus 190 home games. We just talked about Portland at the same price, right? Like there's definitely something there. It is going to be, I think you're going to get a hedge opportunity in that second game though.
Does anybody know what Josh in the chat is asking here?
Yeah, he's like RSL are very good. Like I said, those underlying numbers are really good.
What kind of young hip lingo am I missing out on here?
OP, overpowered for the youngins out there.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. All righty.
It's a blessing in disguise for RSL that they get to keep Luna. I think Mitrovic is an idiot for keeping him off the squad, but to be able to keep Luna.
What's a bigger snub, him or Cowell?
Luna,
like by miles for me.
Really?
Because I look at that under 23s. Uh-oh, we lost him. But I look at the under 23 side, and I don't like you can see it today. They were missing Luna's ability to create.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I thought Luna was a big snub, but all right. So pretty much rounding it out here. We're just gonna kind of, obviously we've been rolling for an hour and 45 minutes here. I've got some spaghetti to get to here in a bit myself, but we are going to throw out our futures. I want to preface it with this though. We did not put our heads together on futures, and when you are betting futures, it really only makes sense if you have a singular approach. So like for me, I kind of made the executive decision. These are not going to be official win or lose. These units are not going to go for us or against us. We're just kind of giving our takes on some futures here because Garrett's going to be you can't just bet all the futures. If you bet all the futures, then you're not going to win because the numbers don't add up, right? So we're just going to kind of give our takes, tell what you want. This is going to be a kind of an unofficial part of the show, but we will definitely give our takes on futures here. Looks like Sebastian's trying to get back in here. I'm not sure if he's back. I hear him. Can't see him. Let's see. Oh. All righty. So to start off with, we've got Columbus Crew, and I believe that's one of yours at 11-1.
Yeah. You give me Crew at 11-1. They don't have to get group play. Of course, you've got to navigate. Does that layoff hurt them, right? But I mean, no one plays like the Crew side does right now. And so to get them to not have to navigate group play, they come in during the knockouts at 11-1, which makes them, they're actually on most books the second favorite. There's no way I'm ignoring the Crew in this tournament. I mean, and there's not a single Liga MX side that's going to scare them. I mean, they went through in CONCACAF Champions Cup, and I mean just mowed through some League MX sides. So that one bugaboo that a lot of MLS teams might have, Crew don't have that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with this at 11-1. I'm seeing like some 8-1s and some 9-1s at this point. Probably wouldn't play it there. I wonder what Columbus Crew, how they're feeling about it, this opportunity, given making it all the way to the Champions League final and losing. Is it like, do they have a whole nother run in them, or, does league form carry over? And then, I mean, Nancy is Nancy, and this team is loaded, so I don't have any issue with it. I kind of chose to play some outside of the top 2 or 3 favorites personally, but I mean, I definitely have no issue with it. And then this next one, I'll kind of let you start us off with this next one. I'm on this one as well. So we're looking at, there he is. We're talking about Cruz Azul, 16-1. I think that's a great price, Garrett. Take it away, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, like, me, Liga MX is not a league I follow heavily. When I saw that price, I mean, it just had me scratching my head a little bit. I already liked them to win the group. I like them in a lot of other spots straight up for different matchups. And plus 1,600. This was always going to be something I was going to fire on. I've only got 3 futures. This is the second one. And yeah, I think Cruz Azul represent just a really good value at that spot. I agree with Sebastian's take earlier. Well, I think you see a little more aggression out of these Liga MX sides, where like if the first time they didn't take it seriously, because I get it, they were not happy that they were just having to travel all the time, right? Like that was annoying. I think they're going to come back a little hungrier here, and at 16-1, this feels like a great play. I know MLS Digest in the chat mentioned it earlier for an outright. Yeah, I totally agree.
Sebastian, what do you think? First of all, what do you think about Cruz Azul this year? Are they legit? Are they pretenders, or is this actually a real contender?
I think Cruz Azul is it's a tough question. Is Cruz Azul a real contender? Is like the most loaded question in Mexican soccer. It's like asking, are the Cowboys a legit contender to win the Super Bowl? Sorry.
Oh boy.
Like on paper, for sure, yes. I think it's I think they're a really good team. I think in this tournament, there are probably 4 to 5 teams better. I do think they probably win their group. So what side of the bracket does that put them on?
That puts them in the top right.
Top right. Okay, so opposite. So not America.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think Cruz Azul is better than Columbus. I'll tell you that. Probably playing in the United States.
That was the first future, was Columbus Crew plus 1,100.
Yeah. I would between those two. I'd lead in Columbus for a variety of reasons. I also think just like, there's some value to not being. Obviously, Columbus is in a transfer window as well, but Cruz Azul has had a very, they've had some significant movement in this window. They lost a guy kind of, not controversially to them, Huescas, who's their right back who went over to Denmark. They were trying to like get him to re-sign because they wanted to get some money for him, and he kind of forced his way out, and Cruz Azul were kind of butthurt about it. So, and that's not an insignificant loss for them. He's like walked right into the starting lineup for Copenhagen over there. So, Cruz Azul and one of their big players, Antuna, has been nonstop linked with a move to Greece, which has also been, reportedly falling through. And who knows how that affects the player. So some questions about Cruz Azul, even though they've gotten off to a really good start in the league so far. I think they're kind of in that, let's say 4 to 6 range for me in Liga MX, and I would probably put them a little bit deeper, maybe 6 to 8 range in terms of favorites to win this tournament.
Okay. So
This price puts them at 6. So you're right. You're right there.
So looking at the bracket, at the layout, I'll just say right off the top before I get into one of mine, top left and top right of this bracket to me are substantially easier pathways to the quarterfinals, semifinals. Really not even close. So this makes me like the 16-1 on Cruz Azul even better because look, they're going to get the winner of it's going to be either out of the Cincinnati group, right? So it'll be Cincinnati or NYC in their second round game, and then you're looking at probably either the winner of Orlando, San Luis, Montreal group or the Atlanta, DC group, in the third round, and then you're looking at the winner of probably. Now that's it. I mean that gets you to the corners to the quarters. So it's like that's not too bad. Considering some of these.
That's not scary at all.
No, it's not scary at all. And then top left, I've got a lot of action on the top left because I took a similar approach. I'm going to have some on Cruz Azul as well, maybe a sprinkle on somebody else in the top right, but I'm looking at Toluca. I mean, I talked about them a little bit earlier. They're in the West 4, which is I think they're going to win that group, so that puts them in the top left. And then really, to me, they're basically on a freight train towards meeting Club America, and probably as far as in the final of that quadrant, because there's just not a whole lot of other teams there. You're looking at that St. Louis City, FC Dallas, Juarez group. You're looking at Portland, Colorado, Leon. You got who else we got here? Seattle, Minnesota, Necaxa. So, the top left and the top right of this bracket, I know they don't do it on purpose because it's a shuffle and, they try to use last year's results, to seed and everything, but man, much substantially easier path to quarterfinals and semifinals for the top left and top right. So, I think
that bottom left could have Rayados, LAFC, like.
Oh, it's loaded.
That's anybody who's down in that, stay away. I don't know, stay away from it, but
the way I kind of approached it is take some early action on the top left and the top right. And then obviously I don't have an issue with Columbus, but take some early action there. And then as we move along, as the picture gets clearer, you're still going to get some decent prices, but I don't think there's a whole lot of value on the bottom left or bottom right because it's just so congested with really, really good teams. So, so I'm taking a shot on Toluca. Also going to take a little sprinkle on Pumas, just because I mentioned it earlier. I'm real high on Pumas. They are coming out of West 1. Which is going to be that bottom. I think it's going to be that bottom left. Is it? Let me see.
Bottom left. Yeah.
West 1 winner. So, that's just a play on a team that I think is good. And then we got one more. Garrett's. This is a.
You got Pumas winning the group over Rayados.
Yeah. So I almost took that on the show. There's actually a decent arbitrage opportunity there. If you just want to fade Austin, you can find plus money on both of those. You can find plus money on Pumas to win the group, and you can find plus money on Rayados to win the group. And that's basically just like anybody other than Austin wins this group, and you're going to make money. That's just but I mean, obviously you'd have to put a decent size bet down on that for that to be worth it, with it being an arbitrage. But I think Pumas beats Monterrey. I think Monterrey, they look a little choppy out of the blocks this year.
Yeah. I mean, they're an interesting team. I think they're one of those teams that may have held on to a coach a little bit too long. Their manager's pretty unpopular. Tano Ortiz, he used to be the America manager, and there was quite a bit of thought that he might not make it back to this year. So
What?
But overall though, what I would say is like Rayados and Tigres. Well, I'm looking at sport DraftKings here being 20-1 in a tournament like this. I mean, obviously Tigres is not what they were. Rayados still has a hell of a roster. I mean, a hell of a roster. So as long as they get out and they're in the knockout part, which you assume that they will be, that just feels like a really good value. The thing about Rayados is they're a little similar to Cruz Azul. They have a kind of choking dog DNA a little bit. For all the talent, they haven't won what you might expect them to win in the recent years. But on paper, I think you can make the argument they might be the best, especially with America's injuries right now and Tigres' age. They might be the best roster in the Mexican league. So that they're significantly behind. Again, where do they end up? If they're second out of W1, they're still in that side of the bracket, and actually they're probably getting LAFC in like round of 16. So
real quick, why is Brandon Vasquez not starting for this team anymore?
Dude, I think so one is, how good do you think Brandon Vasquez is? That's the first question. Rayados is a big team. They can spend big money. And honestly, when they went out and got Brandon Vasquez, I was kind of surprised. Like, they already had a guy in Berterame who was very much more than enough. He'd been a Golden Boot winner, like in Liga MX. So then they bring him in and they move Berterame out wide and they bring Vasquez in, and sometimes they play them together, but they moved Berterame, who I thought was a better player, to make space for Vasquez. Brandon just didn't finish his chances. And Rayados is a big spending club with a massive fan base. Some might call it toxic, but you don't score there and you come in with a big price. One, the fans are going to turn on you, and like, you don't wait for a forward to score at Rayados. You get your chance, you score and you become a club legend, or you don't and you get moved on from. So I think it's a big moment right now for Brandon Vasquez in his career. Like, he's because there was a moment when he first got there where he started he was scoring goals, and his kind of profile, which again is kind of different than what they usually see down there, seemed to be effective, but that wore off very quickly, and Berterame went back to being the guy. So, they're a team that's tough to put a lot of faith in, but they are a very, very talented team, Monterrey.
Fair.
I agree. I'll get to LFC in a second. I agree with Monterrey. They burned me last year in this tournament, and it's that whole thing about, when are you going to actually do it, right? Like, when are you going to win with this roster you have? Yep. And that's ultimately why I could not pull the trigger. I think they're in a great spot for this tournament this year, just like they were last year. I thought last year they were in a great spot. But yeah, it is just, I'm at the point with them now where you got to do it before I back you anymore. Like I need to see you win something. So in that, I'm not scared of that bottom left quadrant though, because of what LAFC could potentially be bringing in during this tournament, especially by the time we get to knockouts. I would expect to see Giroud by knockout time. Even if they give him an extended offseason. Again, I cannot be high enough on that Lewis O'Brien news, just with the potential of him being loaned in. I'm really high on that guy. He is a dude who could absolutely play in the championship, especially for a mid-tables club who's not really pushing and going to spend a lot of money to try to get promoted to EPL. But the EPL is just too much, right? That's the cutoff. It's just too much of a lift. And so I'm high on what he could do if he came back to MLS. So there's a lot of potential there with LFC with me. And unlike Cooper, I'm not taking big reaches here. I was pleased with what I saw last tournament from the teams we expected to, outside of Nashville. I think Nashville was that dark horse that, of course, got on a run. But so, yeah, for me, I'm sticking it. I'm not taking real big, long odds. I've got LAFC and Crew both at plus 1,100, where I'm tackling the bottom left and the bottom right quadrants, and then Cruz Azul for that top right quadrant. That top left quadrant, I think, is more competitive than than maybe what we're going to expect outside of Club America, of course. I'm just then that puts me at 14. If I took Club America there, they're like plus 1,200, plus 1,300 somewhere. I think that stretches me a little too thin here for my futures, especially with all the group play we've got going on. And Cooper, you know this. When it comes to tournaments like this, I'll revisit these futures once this table shakes out and once I see these matchups and where these knockouts are going. I have no problem diving in at maybe worse prices than what you could get now once I have a little more clarity. I do find it funny that Inter Miami is still the favorite on almost every book. And like I said, there is a world where Messi doesn't play. And so there's just no way I can lay that price.
No. Yeah, I mean, you would make more money just betting Miami draw no bet, every game. If they make it to the knockout, just continue to bet them and just double down on it. As far as an 8-1, you'd make more money in 2 or 3 rounds than you would if they won the whole thing. So there's not really value as far as that future goes, especially with the odds that will adjust without Messi, as far as game by game odds. So Sebastian, let me ask you about your squad real quick, because looking at the outright winners, you've got Inter Miami, 8-1, 9-1 range, Columbus Crew, LAFC, and then the highest rated, according to the odds makers, MX squad is the Eagles, Club America. So they are anywhere from 12-1 to 13-1. Is that a price you're interested in, or I know you said they were banged up, right?
Yeah, just lost Zendejas to a broken leg. I think, they said a broken tibia, which sounds very dramatic. Then they came out and 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe that's 4 to 6 weeks till he's running again. I never saw a broken leg recover so quickly, but who knows what's happening. They've got some other injuries as well, and honestly, they're they haven't got off to it. They won over the weekend, kind of last minute goal, but they've not gotten off to a great start this season. In Mexico, there's a thing, campeonitis, which is, after you win a title, there's usually a pretty significant hangover. They've won back-to-back titles, so I think this is kind of a moment of hangover. They just shipped Quiñones, Julian Quiñones, who is their big superstar player, to Saudi for a big bit of money. But, that and Zendejas immediately makes them, much less dangerous. They did, as I mentioned, bring in Chiquito Sanchez, but he's like a very good player, but maybe not like in a position of obvious need for them. Like, they have a lot of very good central midfielders right now, Fidalgo, Jonathan Dos Santos. They got a lot of guys that can play in that engine room, and he's a creative engine room guy, but like, you also have Diego Valdez there, who is your number 10. So, I think there's a little bit what happened with Tigres, where they started to get old. America's attack between Valdez and Henry Martin might kind of be hitting that moment. They won the league last season, both of last seasons, but the last season they did so very unimpressively, and the attack kind of limped through the playoffs. So, I just don't think they're maybe where you might think the 2-time defending champions of Mexican football should be. There's a lot of talk around their coach. Could he get a job in Brazil? Could he get the Brazilian national team job because he is Brazilian? There's a lot of questions. There's just a lot of questions about America right now. So I would, I will say this. They also, not as badly as Chivas, were kind of humiliated with how Leagues Cup went last year. And America is a business. And so the bosses of America run the biggest businesses in Mexico. And so there will be and they know the club is a business for them here in the States. There'll be a desire for a deep run, a demand for a deep run. But there is truly a lot of questions around this squad. I think, they're on the right side of the bracket, though, at least what it looks like now. And having the ability to kind of slot right in there and not have to play those group games gives them a little bit more time. But some of that might just be I'm a pessimistic fan a little bit, and they've won a couple titles, but I think it would be a lot to ask for them to string together the run to finish the run they've been on with another run, given all the absences. And I don't think there's any new stars walking through the door. They've tried to have some, you guys mentioned Idrissi, who's like a great signing from Netherlands that hit at Pachuca. America brought in their version of Idrissi, this guy Javairon, and he's terrible. So, and that's the guy that I think maybe they were IDing to replace Quiñones, and he
Right.
hasn't really been that guy. He's had a couple decent moments here in the early start to the season, but America is not what they were even at the end of last season, and that was a step behind the season before when they won it. So it's a team that right now feels a little bit in decline and in need of like a kind of reinforcement. They need to bolster the roster a little bit.
I honestly think that's just a really sound take. Like, you call yourself a pessimistic fan, but like logically, all that made sense to a brain that doesn't follow that league like that. With the tendencies, the questions that you raised, that it just made it's a really sound take.
Yeah, and I wouldn't worry too long because I'm sure Club America will be bringing in plenty of
Exactly.
reinforcements. Yeah,
Exactly. And if they don't, the fans, the exigencia, the pressure will be there. Like, people go crazy for Club America. So even
oh, it's
like
huge.
anything that and this is the pressure that they live under. They don't win this tournament, it's a failure. It's the only club in Mexico where anything other than the title is viewed as a failure. And even as a reasonable fan, I kind of feel that way a lot of the times. But because of that, I also think they win more than anybody else. There's a genuine pressure, not just from the fans, but from the ownership group, the directiva. Like, if you don't win in America, you just don't last. You're gone. You don't have a
Yeah.
legacy there. You're immediately moved on from, and sometimes it's cutthroat, but it's led to a lot of success.
Yeah, on the entire continent, across all sports, there may only be two teams that fall into that category, which is win the entire thing or it's a failure. Club America and probably the Yankees. I mean, I as far as that pressure from the fan base every single year, maybe the Eagles, but they're just delusional idiots. So I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm
Yeah,
probably
I'm in
even more
DC,
delusional.
so I'm in DC. I'm not necessarily a Commanders fan, but I don't have too much love for Eagles fans either.
Man, being a Commanders fan, I couldn't imagine.
No, my dad's from Buffalo, so I'm actually more Bills. I'm more Bills in the American
Oh
football
wow.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a neat franchise. The way people get out there and shovel snow and
Yeah, neat, long suffering is needs one word for it. Lose
yeah,
4 Super Bowls in a row when you're age 7, 8, 9, and 10. See what words you come up for it.
yeah,
Those are
that
some
hurts.
those. When I say pessimistic sports fan, now you know where it comes from.
No doubt. I'm a Cowboys fan. Unfortunately, I was born into it, so yeah, I don't know.
Hey,
It's
at least you got something to look back at.
yeah, on like old grainy VCRs.
That was my youth, by the way. That was my youth. The old grainy VCRs with the 3/4 inch tapes where they got to bracket it now so you could see it.
No doubt. Cool. Well, shoot, we pretty much did the thing.
Massive show.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Obviously, probably the longest show we've ever done. We tried to dig into as much as we could today. I, obviously, really enjoyed having Sebastian on from ESPN. Enjoyed the normal rundown, and then obviously we added. Just trying to go through them here. Let's see. So we did groups, we did outright futures, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no 6 individual gameplays. I'm not even going to run through them again, just because go back and watch the show. We covered quite a bit. Kirk, thanks for tuning in as always, and thanks for everybody being active in the chat. I always forget to ask until the end of the show. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and then follow us on Twitter too at MLS Live Podcast. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
No, I was stoked to have Sebastian here. This was awesome. So make sure you absolutely check out his stuff. ESPN FC Football America is the podcast, the show. He's got a lot of little projects he's on. So yeah, check out all this stuff. It's all great. The show was great. Just a blast. We fully covered you for Leagues Cup, fully from start to finish. You're fully covered now.
Guys, great to be with you, man. I said it off air before we started, but there's just so few people doing stuff in this space. For those of us that love soccer and also love sports betting. So you guys, when I first really started, my son was born maybe like a year and a half ago, and I wasn't allowed to work for a month. So that's when I really started getting into the apps and stuff, and trying to fill the void that way. And I picked up on you guys and kind of what you're doing. And obviously it's nice when you pick winners, but I could tell like just tons of research, great data, great information, and really good stuff, dude. You guys are definitely onto something good and big here.
Appreciate that.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
All righty, folks. Well, that'll do it. Make sure you, again, keep tabs on the Twitter account, because we are going to update y'all on kind of when we're going to be recording. I don't know if we can do 2 episodes a week. Me and Garrett will talk about it. The Leagues Cup layout is a little bit different, obviously, than normal match week stuff. So just keep tabs on us there, and we'll see you guys next week.
Best of luck, guys. Thank you so much.